Welcome to the COVID-19 Financial Oversight Committee meeting. It is May 15th, and we will go ahead and start with our agenda. First thing on the agenda is the opportunity for public comment. We have one person. Latanya, did you want to speak, or your comment says here to find out?
Well, there was a box that says support or don't support. I'm just here to get more information.
Okay, so
the agenda didn't say.
Okay. So I didn't know if you wanted to speak. So
yes,
then,
I do want to speak. Yeah.
Okay, well, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, I have 2 minutes. And I want to make sure I'm brief, and I know you all are probably looking at me like, doesn't she work for Metro? Isn't she in the mayor's office? No, not anymore. I have received, I'm trying to write my comments down so I get my 2 minutes in. Over the last 36 hours, I received a bunch of emergency phone calls about the possibility of the Freeman Center at Burris Hall not opening its doors yet, even though the building hasn't opened its doors yet. This morning, Dr. Clark graciously met with the Board of Advisors this morning to let us know about the possibility of the funding being pulled. I just want to sit here again as a member of the prior mayor's office, just to remind the committee when we came before, we came with a coalition of small business ecosystem providers that all supported this, the community that supported this, and supported Fisk throughout all of this to make this a reality, particularly to support Black entrepreneurs in Davidson County. And I should have said this, I am here in my personal capacity as a 10-year Davidson County resident. I'm not here in my professional capacity, so I want to make sure that's absolutely clear. I also just want to give everyone a reminder that I used to be the director of the SBA State Office, which is a federal agency that has funded through grants multiple organizations around the state, like universities and nonprofits as well, to help businesses grow and scale and develop. And this was an effort to do that here in Davidson County for our Black entrepreneurs, again, at the wonderful Fisk University and HBCU. So I'm here to find out a little bit more about what's going on. Again, graciously, Dr. Clark met with the Board of Advisors. We're just a Board of Advisors. We're not the board for the Freeman Center, as she also noted this morning, to give us a heads up. So I just want to find out what's going on so we can figure out what the next steps are so we can build a path for Black business owners here in Davidson County that doesn't exist.
Great. Thank you. Turn that off so it doesn't buzz on anybody. That will lead us into our agenda, and the first item on the agenda is a contract amendment request from Fisk University. And so to kick that off, I believe we're going to have Finance Director Kevin Trumba.
Yeah, and since we opened up with a public comment on this topic, I think I'm going to skip over some of the remarks that I have prepared and just recognize that Fisk is the topic here, and even though I was not here when that grant was proposed and passed and even managed, since then, I think all of you were. I've seen some of the recordings of your meetings and the minutes and so forth, and I'm going to presume that all of you are familiar with the original purpose of the grant, which, as I said earlier, was intended really to be for the Freeman Center and more specifically for Burris Hall and so forth. Of that grant, $10 million grant, about $1.1 million or so seems to have been spent already on design and development, things that it was intended to do there for the promotion of Burris Hall, and as so well said here, for the promotion of entrepreneurship. Since that time, though, conditions have really changed at Fisk. It is an organization that for a very long time, like so many others of it, has been very thinly capitalized. And in this particular year that we're in, their financial challenges are growing. And they're growing particularly this time of the year, summer, which I think most of you would recognize the seasonality that comes with managing a university like this through its seasons. And they are starting to see some changes in federal funding and the way that money flows to them, and it's really changed the complexion of their financial stability. And so at this moment, what I'm here to do is to have President Clark in a moment talk a moment about Fisk and some new leadership she's bringing. I think all of you are aware she's just come on board in the last 6-7 months and has her own view of where the university really needs to go. And then we also have board member Frank Garrison here, who's been on the board about a year. About a year or so. And is really working with the Finance Committee and all to help bring a lot of the stability that's really going to be needed. project. But the overall premise here really is that Burris Hall, as was intended, can go on at some point, but at this moment, the university has different needs and really needs to work through its own fundamentals before it can bring around the completion of that project. And so with that said, what I would like to propose is that the remainder of the grant, so a little less than $9 million or so, have its scope expanded and allow me the authority then to start working with the university on its most basic needs, which at this moment I view to be its students and student life and making sure that the education is going to continue. Most of you may know there's a little over 1,000 students to get their education there, and then they employ hundreds and more in terms of faculty and other support there at the campus. And so that's what I would like to propose. And so with that, I'm going to ask President Clark to maybe talk a little bit about her leadership, her direction, and where she really sees the future of the university, and then the possibility of coming back to the Burris Hall project at some point.
So first, thank you all for having us today. So yes, I've been at Fisk now right at about 7 months. I have spent that time talking to students, talking to faculty, and talking to staff in a quest to better understand how do we create sustainability at the institution. We just had our 150th commencement. I would like to make sure that during my tenure there that the work I do will assure us all that Fisk will have another 300th commencement, saying that we're around for another 150 years. With that being the case, I have been spending my time carefully evaluating where the institution rests today and how we're going to get to the end of this fiscal year and into the first quarter, maybe even second quarter of the next fiscal year. One of the triggers that has come up that has given me great concern is around FAFSA. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the free application for federal student aid, but 90% of the students at Fisk University are on financial aid. 60% of those students are Pell Grant eligible. With those kinds of numbers, as you can imagine, the institution carries a very heavy load in making sure that we can sustain the operation and to make sure that those students are able to come semester by semester by semester. With that, we have recently been in my work with the Finance Committee of the board and with our trustees. We've learned that our numbers are going to really be stretched and it's going to be really tight because of numerous issues, but chief amongst them, if you've been reading about this federal debacle, we're very, very concerned. That is going to impact us from this day forward, probably well into the admissions of our students in the fall and understanding specifically what kind of funding that they may have to support their admission. So with that, we have been in lots of conversations and primarily with the board about how we're going to bridge ourselves and in our awareness realizing that this is one opportunity that we should definitely evaluate in order to bridge ourselves and really do a project and remain focused on what we're there for. So as you all know, we are the first institution of higher learning in the city of Nashville. We were the first. And at that time when this institution was started, it was to educate anyone and everyone who wanted an education. That remains true today. Thank you.
So that's my request to the committee.
Questions?
I was not in favor of, I think everybody remembers that, I was not in favor of this original allocation in the beginning, not because I didn't think it was a good cause and it was a good thing to do. Like, it's a great idea. I just didn't think that it was, first of all, I didn't have confidence that we could get the project to the finish line and for it to be successful. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that Mr. Freeman passed away so early. I feel like if he had been here, I would have felt a lot more comfortable with it. And so here we are. I don't think it's the responsibility of the Nashville taxpayers to bail out a private university. And I know that's a very blunt statement, but that's what this is. And I know that you have inherited a lot, and I appreciate where you are. It's unfortunate that the federal government is failing you, and I will refrain from going into a campaign speech there. But that's where the problem lies. And so I'm wondering where, when you say it's a bridge to what? Because I don't know what that solution is. And these dollars, we're tasked with being good stewards of these one-time dollars to recover from COVID. This is not a COVID recovery issue in my estimation. I think there's been some lack of leadership there, unfortunately, for quite some time. And you're not alone. There's several universities. But I don't know that there's one other private university in this county that we would be contemplating this about. The one thing that, as I've thought about what's the solution, because we have made this allocation, we are changing scope, which at that point it's a completely different scope. We're not building an entrepreneur center anymore. We're not subsidizing the operations of that entrepreneurship center anymore. We are subsidizing education at that point, which is a great cause, but was that the original intent? At that point, in my opinion, it should come back to this committee to. This isn't just an amendment. This is a huge change in scope that I don't think would ever have been contemplated if that was the original goal, right? So we started this entrepreneurship center. Now we're talking about making up for FAFSA failures, for lack of a better term. And if we were in that situation, I don't know that would have come to this committee. So we're in a situation where we've got $10 million of an allocation, 1 point whatever of it has already been spent in trying to move that project forward. So we've got 8+ left over. What do we do with that $8+ million? I personally don't think this is the right way to go. Again, coming back to where I'm trying to figure out how we could make this work is, instead of it being a grant, being a loan. And even if it's a 0% loan, so that we aren't saying that the Nashville taxpayers are subsidizing a private university. I personally think that's a bad look. So we aren't a bank, but could we do that, just thinking outside the box, could we do that through pathway lending so that we have some type of accountability to say, look, we had these great intentions before, this project is not coming to fruition, we have new needs, let's structure this in a different way that has more accountability to the taxpayers but also gets the job done. So that's what I would hope this committee would look at. And here's my fifth. I love you.
I know you do. I love you too.
Councilman Gamble.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments, and I understand your position. But I will say that there's no other private institution in Nashville that hasn't gotten the support that Fisk has not received over the 150 years that Fisk has been here. I would also say those other private institutions, there would be no need for them to come here because they have huge endowments, which Fisk does not have. So to compare Fisk to other universities is really unfair. Also, other universities are having the same impact that the FAFSA debacle has caused. I know for a fact that Belmont is experiencing similar issues, but unlike Fisk, Belmont has a healthy endowment to endure their sustainability. So to me, this is about the sustainability of an institution that has brought a lot to this city, done a lot for this city, and has not received a lot. That was the purpose of why we approved the allocation in the first place, because we as a committee and as a council recognize that. I don't think that has changed. That position or that issue is still in effect today. I do appreciate the finance director and President Clark for looking at, would it be better that they proceed with this entrepreneur center with the sustainability of the institution at risk? I don't think so. That would have been irresponsible.
Yes.
And so I think it is very responsible that they're coming back to us now and saying there are other priorities at this time. This COVID money, from what I understand, this is an allowable use of the money because it does help fill gaps that we that we had during the pandemic. And so for those reasons, I think, and not just because I am a Fisk alum, and I will let full disclosure, I'm a Fisk alum and I'm a big supporter of my university. I'm a recurring giver of Fisk University. Have been
You
for
start an
many years.
endowment. I'm kidding.
You gonna give me the money to do it? I'll do that. But in any case, and so I, would hope that the committee would consider those things in addition to what my colleague has expressed. So, thank you.
Yes. So I was not in support of the allocation before in the past. Similar, not because I didn't believe in it, but my thought process was we are using ARP funds to build something that is not Metro property. And so that was where my concern came from. I know that Fisk is in a very tough spot right now. And I know that they've been in a tough spot for several years, right? So I guess I want to make sure that Fisk is around for years to come. That's important to me. It is a historic university who has seen several leaders come out of it. And it is a place that many call home. So I'm in favor of a loan. I think that would be great. I guess I have several questions. If we do a loan with zero interest would be what I prefer. Once that money gets brought back in, would we then consider the money to be used for the Entrepreneur Center like it was originally intended to, so we make sure that that project is still, going to proceed, and how long that would take. So I guess that's my question. What are the plans to get funds into the bank to make sure that you all are in a good position, and that, and then my second question would be, what is the timeline you all are looking at if we did this in a loan sort of proposal?
Yeah, so let me try and address that, because I've looked at a number of scenarios as this situation has really developed here in the last few weeks. And the cash position of the university is very thin at this moment, and so providing this bridge from where it is today well into the next academic year, so that we can assure students that they are going to matriculate here, that there is going to be this additional 150 years of celebration, just like the one we just did. That is the goal, and they definitely need the help to make that happen. Coming around to a loan scenario here bumps into a fair number of issues that we would see, whether it's a university or a corporation or others, where they have existing lenders. Those lenders have covenants, and working with them in terms of how our money would be used versus their money and how that would be introduced is probably going to be a lengthy project to go do. And I don't think we can complete that in time to really help Fisk as it stands today. And so that doesn't mean that we couldn't at some point try and find an arrangement where we pursue just the simple expansion of the scope of the grant and do that today, that at some point in the future that Fisk cannot build Burris Hall. We are in no way, I'm in no way proposing that's the case, but quite simply looking at the fundamentals of the organization and trying to get them the money and time to make sure that this next academic year really continues.
Would there be a commitment to build it if this isn't done in a loan?
To complete the project, is
Yeah.
there a commitment to complete the renovation of Burris Hall? Is that your question?
The Entrepreneur Center, yeah. That's what we're talking about, right? The Entrepreneur
The
Center.
renovation of Burris Hall was what the grant was intended for. Included in that was a project, that was a program. And so as far as where I sit today, looking at what I'm hoping we're going to be able to do, is definitely with some development activities, be able to complete the project as far as the renovation of Burris Hall. The other part of that, though, is once it is completed, then we will have to go back and make sure its intent and purposes will also impact ongoing existence of Fisk University, i.e., what are the priorities and what are the needs at the institution outside of a full facility being used just for an entrepreneur center and just for an incubation center.
If I remember correctly, in our previous discussion, we had talked about, you know, the ARP funds being used for renovations, and then there was a group, which I take as the advisory board, that would make sure that, you know, it was fully staffed and operational. So there would still be that continual
Well,
work.
part of that,
Don't mean to interrupt, I'm just nodding.
Oh, okay. The part that I understand is that Fisk would also incur the responsibility of the operation, i.e. $400,000 to $500,000 a year to make sure it's staffed, and that those employees have the benefits that they're seeking. At the same time, that Fisk was going to take on the responsibility of securing a $10 million endowment for the longevity of the project. I can tell you from where I sit as a new president of the institution, $400,000 to $500,000 added to my annual operating budget for something that is not for the continuation of education of students at Fisk right now would be very difficult. Another part of that would be a challenge is that we need to grow the endowment at Fisk University. So if we had already, we're in a place where all those things were already done and they were already in place, I could answer that question differently. But today I can't answer that question because we're not in a place where I can comfortably say we can add $400,000 to $500,000 in operating dollars a year to our budget to operate this program. And certainly don't see how I would be in a position to do an endowment, a separate endowment for a project that is not of the benefit to the students that we are educating at the institution. That is the primary purpose of Fisk University.
If it's proper for me to speak, she shared that with the Board of Advisors this morning, and we assured her that we didn't realize that as a Board of Advisors, and we were prepared. Our role and purpose was to bring those funds to the programming and continue with the capital raising for it to continue, so they would not be leaning on Fisk itself as a university, and continue, of course, the path, the purpose of the center. I'm not focusing on the building right now, but the purpose and the programming of the center, which includes the students. So we had that discussion this morning at the Board of Advisors, that was news to us, and that we were all there to bring resources, including capital, grants, which is already started and continuing.
That's all my questions.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Representative Ball.
Thank
And
you.
then Sarah, and then.
I think I have a unique perspective for ARP funding, sitting on both this and the state's board, as we'll be meeting in June for the state to try to figure out what to do with the remaining funding. I reviewed some of the guidelines for ARP funding, and one of them was to assist small businesses. Remember, we allocated huge sums of money to help businesses. We made a special effort to support a large group of our nonprofit artist community. I say that to say that no one could have predicted what would happen with COVID-19. And certainly I remember many conversations we had about making sure that particularly hard-hit businesses in certain parts of the community would be supported. Matter of fact, we had, I think Equity Alliance went out and did a survey and brought back information talking about the impact, particularly upon those in the African American community. I hear the concerns of my colleagues on this committee, but I will remind them that I think part of our goal was to do something that would be long-range, far-reaching, and certainly Fisk did not come asking, but the city came offering. And I think that is where we must remember that our initial work was to be done, that the city came offering and said, how about we partner? Let's collectively see what we can do to invest. One of the challenges we had at the state level was that many of the minority-owned businesses could not qualify for the state funds because their record keeping and their businesses were not being operated in the traditional manner and couldn't even qualify because the Department of Revenue did not have many records for them conducting their business in the traditional manner. And we struggled with the same thing, trying to figure out how to, at the state level, help across the state. Unfortunately, at the state level, we did not do what the city had done. We didn't find a partner to establish a business incubation and entrepreneur center. I have watched over the years how many great businesses came out of the incubation center that was located across from Tennessee State's campus. One particular one was Zycron, Christie Cookie. So we have a chance, I think, now to honor the request of the university, who is saying, give us a chance to pause and regroup and get things in order, and then come back with a proposal that will achieve the results that we initially supported. And I hope that we would take that into consideration. I don't say these things lightly, but I think we have a chance to do this and to follow through with our original commitment. So thank you for hearing me out on that.
Sarah?
I remember when we were having this discussion about the renovation of Burris Hall, there were some contingencies of fundraising that was needed to truly make the renovation evolve into what would be a functional entrepreneur center. And that contingency was something that, led to, I think, a lot of questions on our parts, because you don't really want to use the art monies and then end up having a building but no service provided associated with it. I think about all the different purposes that we've allocated this money for. It's and we'll hear from some of the representatives today about education and workforce development. Fairgrounds vendors, small businesses, as Representative Love just talked about, hunger, immigrant services. We really have had a very broad reach in how we've used these funds to help immediate needs of the community. I've got a couple of questions because I've seen announcements about the Entrepreneur Center, and there's an executive director of it, I believe, and I think even maybe a cohort about what has or hasn't been done, and sort of where it stands. But I feel like having the unique circumstances of Fisk presented to us, let's say it was just a new request. Let's say the Entrepreneur Center request had never happened. I mean, I think this is something that I certainly would be very interested in learning about and would be inclined to support if I understood kind of what we could be getting for the investment. Because that's been something I think we've asked everybody that's been in front of us is what can we expect? And so I would just love to hear a little bit more about that, because I think we've all agreed that we want to invest where it's needed and we want accountability when we invest. So I would just love to hear your comments, President Clark and anyone else.
So first, I would like to share that, of course, I was not a part of the original strategy that established any of this. Therefore, where I am today, I definitely want to see Burris Hall renovation complete. I'm sure you're all aware of the historical significance of that one structure. But I also want to say that the reason the broadening of the scope of this project is so important, and while I understand your statement about Metro investing in a private school, I have to say, if not for Fisk, there would be no Music City. I just want to remind everybody of that. The foundation of this institution was for the purpose of this community, and always has been. But it's specifically been designed to provide the foundation that higher education was important to this community. So what I've been focusing on is looking at how do we sustain the impact of Fisk University, which is higher education. The completion of that project is hugely important to me. And I am right now in the process of putting together a campus master plan that talks about Burrs Hall as well as all of the other structures on that campus. This campus has been there over 150 years. The need for Burrs Hall renovation is equally as important to everything else, but key to me will be that we can make sure that when we complete the project, we want to complete that, and it's going to come from philanthropic work. Fisk has sort of been absent what I've described as a culture of philanthropy. So that's what I have come to the institution and talked to the board and the leaders there about, that we've got to establish a culture of philanthropy that can assure us that Burrs Hall and its intentions, as well as everything else on that campus, goes forward. But that is newly in design. I am already in the midst of making some of my first ask in that area, and as of a week and 1 day ago, have added a vice president of development and alumni affairs to our team so that we can make sure we're in a position to address this culture of philanthropy and complete the project. But it's definitely a part of our plan to complete that project.
In terms of this particular amount, I mean, obviously, I know any amount is helpful, but just in terms of sort of when you think about a grant that would be repurposed, how do you think it would be allocated?
Well, in the very beginning, what we have are gaps associated with financial aid. So those funds have shrank and currently in delay simply because the process that we are heavily dependent on with our federal government has somewhat come to a screeching halt. That's presenting, well, not just for Fisk, but for any institution that is tuition dependent like Fisk is, that has put us in a very precarious position. That's the number one thing. Absent those federal dollars, we are really faced with an uncomfortable situation. I will share with you that, right now we have an enrollment of right under 1,000 students. But for the upcoming year, which is what we're in the middle of right now, we've had more than 15,000 students express an interest in attending our school. And we're at a halt. We don't know if they are putting data in this system and we're not able to get the data out, we're not in a position to extend offer letters. So it's a very complex model, but it's one that the institution has been dependent on. This is why it is important for us to look at supplementing that in a culture of philanthropy so that we can go forward and not only focus on the enrollment of students, the sustainability of the campus, but making sure we meet the needs of our students where they are, going back to those numbers that I shared with you earlier.
I mean, I'll just make one other comment. I know there are others that want to speak, but I mean, if you had not come forward today, this money could have been put into the renovation of a building, and then we would learn about, directly or indirectly, that notwithstanding all the improvements made to that building, there wasn't a sustainable campus, or there was a decline in enrollment, or there were other reasons that prevented it from being a viable concern, and certainly not a viable entrepreneur center. So I appreciate the candor, appreciate coming forward and giving us this opportunity to revisit this situation. As I said before, if this had come in as a fresh request without an entrepreneur center, I think it would be a very compelling request, and I certainly would be, inclined to try to ensure the sustainability of what's really a treasure of Nashville.
Thank you.
How much of the, I'm just gonna say $8.5 million just because it's easier. How much of the $8.5 million is gonna go to, shoring up the tuition shortfall for this upcoming academic year.
Would you like for me to?
Yeah,
So I've been looking at the financial statements there. So to build a financial bridge from where they are today well into next year will require most all of that money. I would say more than half of it would be used in the summertime months until the students return. And then as those students return and hoping for the same cadence of collections that is normally been their seasonality, then hopefully that gets you well into next year. And just getting a little bit more into the financial details, I think that providing that bridge then gives the opportunity for other foundations, for other money sources to look at the leadership of the city, gives the university opportunity to go do that fundraising. And quite frankly, I think that an approach to the original purpose here with the Entrepreneurship Center is to approach local businesses in the area, corporations that traditionally like to be in this area, and see that as a funding source, just like any other college or university model really would do that. But my biggest concern right now is just all of us fully recognizing the gravity that what Ms. Finley just said, is that the entire stake of the university is very important. It's 40 acres right here in our downtown area. It's storied in so many ways that I think all of you are familiar with. Ensuring its sustainability, getting that bridge built, and then allowing the opportunity for the university to come back to Burris Hall, come back to an entrepreneurship center in another way is really, really the right way to go here.
Let me clarify one thing that may have been misunderstanding. The senior class at Fisk this year was only 150 students. That's the fall of 2020 entering class. That was the COVID class. And the other three classes, are close to 300, and that's been more of our historical averages lately, and with less interest than we're seeing now. That 150, as it made its way through Fisk over 4 years, generated. This will be directionally, what's a seven-figure number in terms of the shortfall that it generated for Fisk on an operating budget because it was so few students. When they move out and another 300 come in, you're actually alleviating a lot of that gap. But it was particularly difficult for that class of 2020.
Yeah, I get that. So, and I'm not debating the historical significance of Fisk, its impact on Nashville or even the Middle Tennessee area at all. My concern is we're building a bridge, but I don't know what the bridge is to, right? That's my concern, is if this FAFSA thing is not going to resolve itself and the federal government's not going to do what they have historically done, or they're going to figure out whatever it is they're trying to figure out, and God knows what that is. So we're spending, almost $9 million to get you guys to next year, basically. What happens next year? Are we in this same situation where we have funding gaps from the federal government for tuition? We still don't have Burris Hall. We still don't have the Entrepreneurship Center, yet we still have the same problem, and the Nashville taxpayers are out $8.5 million, and we've really solved nothing. So what is what are your thoughts on where is the other side of that bridge? What's on the other side of the bridge, so that we know that we're not just, this is going to be offensive and I don't mean for it to be, but if in essence wasting money knowing that we're just going to have this cliff, at the end of next year when COVID dollars are over with, we've got no more one-time dollars. It's not going to be part of our operating budget in Metro Nashville. That would never be appropriate. So what's the thought process on the sustainability of if we can get you there, then what? And then also on top of it, the $10 million to do the original project that we wanted, with the $400,000 to $500,000 per year in operating for the center itself, which is significant.
So I want to answer from a financial standpoint, then please from a more strategic standpoint. Financially, there is risk in this. There is a risk that a bridge is built and that the university cannot get all the way across it, and that's a risk for every university that faces this situation. I think the real key for them is to build this bridge and then start fundraising, and it's going to require a lot of leadership from foundations and other money sources that typically surround colleges and universities, but there is no denying that this is a risk. to do that. In terms of the original, entrepreneurship center purpose, I've got some familiarity with that outside of the metro government, and including in the period of time since I've been here serving on the board of the Nashville Entrepreneurship Center. I served with Mr. Freeman and others when this came around, and it's a strong entrepreneurship community, and there is no doubt in my mind that Fisk can provide a home for a lot of what's been going on already, but I do think that the others will come to the aid and help these entrepreneurs. I think that they will absorb that rather quickly, and the real answer to your question is we've got to build the bridge now. Hopefully it is a bridge to another 150 years. There's certainly going to be risk, but I think Fisk's future, like every other university, is going to depend on its fundraising ability.
The investment from the community and area businesses, and we have a fantastic entrepreneurial spirit here in Nashville, and that's a great community, which is what I said in the very beginning, was who should be doing this in the beginning, and not necessarily us. To Councilmember Sepulveda's point of that we're investing in a building that we don't own, which I had a problem with, she had a problem with. So understanding that we have to get through this committee and then budget committee and then council, so this isn't necessarily a given. What else is going on in the background, assuming that this does not pass this body?
So I had a board meeting yesterday. I've had a series of finance committee meetings with the leadership at the institution, and this has been our lead topic. We are looking at if this does not come to pass, then how are we going to move forward? So there have been conversations about that. But I do want to go back and say just a couple of things. The first is, you got my heart rate up when you said if the government doesn't solve this problem. The government will solve this problem, because the education of millions of children in millions of schools around this country is at risk. This is a serious risk. We thought the pandemic was tough to get through. This will be tough to recover from. So you got my heart racing when you said that. I do have faith that they will resolve this problem. They just haven't been able to do it as quickly and as timely as they had hoped. So I'm hoping that by the fall, that this situation with FAFSA, they're looking at bringing in new leadership now. We are in constant communication, by the way, with them about where they are in their efforts to try to move through this juggernaut of a situation. We're working on it every day. The bridge, though, truly for me is what I shared with you earlier, and it's around a culture of philanthropy at Fisk. We just not have really put together, and from what I've discovered, again, keep in mind, I've been there 7 months. So I will tell you what I've discovered in my 7 months is that it is an imperative that we do a better job and a stronger job and a more focused and targeted attention to philanthropy at the institution to support the mission of the school. There's great opportunity there. It took me 6 months to figure out how my initial strategy for that, what it would look like. I'm excited to say that I put that strategy to play, and I'm in a position now of awaiting to hear back on some. It really, for us, is a situation of, for me especially, timing. Just got there. If only this were a year and a half from today, I could better answer your questions about where we have been successful with philanthropy, where we have failed with philanthropy. The interest is there. The ask have not been there. And that's what I have really been focusing my time and attention and energy on. It's just that I didn't get a long enough runway. And as a result of that, ended up working with the finance committee of the board, which includes Trustee Garrison, and in conversations with that committee as well as with the board, and we had a full board meeting and discussion, at length about this yesterday. We're all ready to move forward on the what next. It's almost like we put together a logic model that says this is where we are. If this works, we go this direction. If this doesn't work, we have to look at other directions. But philanthropy is a key part of it, and I think that this is a good time for Fisk to have that strategy in place. It really is.
If I can just add to that, definitely the culture of philanthropy, but also the leadership. Fisk has had 4 presidents in 10 years. We have not had stable leadership for good leadership. I think we are positioned now with the right person at the right time to build that culture of philanthropy and to build that sustainability that Fisk has not seen for a long time. I graduated in '91. When I was there, I came in '87 during a hard time, but by the time I left, we had good leadership and Fisk was on the rise at that time. So I look forward to President Clark taking Fisk to that next level. And as she said, it's timing as far as what is happening now with the federal government as well as with the Burris Hall project and her coming in and trying to put a master plan of infrastructure together and a master plan for the university moving forward. It's all happening at the same time. And so it's difficult, I know, for her or for us to understand or see where that bridge will go. But I'm confident that as the months continue and if we are able to approve this to secure the sustainability moving forward, then we'll see those things, and I'm sure the university will be happy to keep us abreast of what's going on.
Can I ask one more question? Sorry. When FAFSA when they get it together, right? If you mentioned that a lot of the funding is sort of on hold in like a holding pattern. So we're bridging this gap. Is it possible that that money comes back or is it just too bad, so sad, it's late, it hasn't,
So the way the process works, you're interested in being a freshman at Fisk or you're interested in returning to Fisk. You complete your FAFSA form. Then Fisk will get that data with your application, whether you're returning or applying. When we get that data, we're able to share with you how much federal support you're going to get and what the gap is. The gap becomes a responsibility of the institution if you can't fund it. But what I can't do right now is even tell you
what the gap is.
What it is. We have no idea. So what we're waiting to understand is the application process isn't completed until we can download that data. And we don't, like the other schools right now, are struggling with being able to download application data so I can even send you your letter saying congratulations, welcome to Fisk, this is your financial aid package. That's what's absent. So when will that happen? And now keep in mind, we just had commencement. Usually by commencement, students already have offer letters. Students already know what their responsibilities are to return to the campus. You already know that. I would say right now when you look at our application pool, I think maybe 10% know that. I'm hoping those numbers will grow on a week-by-week level. I'm just not sure. I can't confidently respond to that right now. But what I do know is that right now about 10% of the students know. We just have to get those numbers up higher. I'm optimistic based on the communications I get from our federal government that for sure that maybe by the end of September we'll have a better percentage through rate that I can share with you. But right now, that's all.
Which is past the time for the semester to start.
The
fall semester anyway.
We will, if we get the data and you want to come, we're going to have to start probably, we'll take everyone that can be there. We're not going to turn away those that are just getting their information. They're just going to have to study really hard and really fast and catch up if they choose to take that on. And that's what's really kind of
And I just want to put an exclamation point on something that underlies this that Trustee Garrison mentioned. There's been a volume issue through COVID, just like so many other schools here. So when he's talking about the matriculation rate and so forth here, I think it's true that applications are way up. I think they'll continue to stay up for a whole lot of reasons. I don't think that the federal government's going to default on their commitment to students across the nation, but I do think timing's going to be a challenge. And honestly, in my own research, looking at bringing this to you today, I mean, I had to really think about it hard a lot of these same questions, and it doesn't take long to start looking at the number of universities that have failed or are about to fail because they can't find a funding source here. And so I wouldn't be here today unless I just really felt like the entire purpose of Burroughs Hall and Entrepreneurship Center doesn't work if we can't ensure the premise of the students that are there today. Let's give this a chance to work. I think that you know, it's an incredible entrepreneurship community that we have here. I really think that when asked, they're going to come help with that, and that we can really, you know, rescue a lot of what is there, whether it's in Burroughs Hall or somewhere else, and really provide a pathway to entrepreneurs that frankly have faced huge walls, huge barriers to entries. A lot we could say about that, but in the end, I do feel like this is the right thing to do, or I wouldn't be here to ask that we do it. It does have a risk, and you're entirely correct about that.
I really don't want this to fail under our watch if we could do something about it, right? I think that's important. My question is, can we create an MOU? Because I hear your concerns about their position with their lenders and the time frame of that. Could we create an MOU with the city on how this would work? My main concern is making sure that once we're in a better financial position, that we're able to come back to the table and look at the original intent of these dollars, which was the Entrepreneur Center. So if an MOU would be a possibility, I think it would make at least me feel more comfortable that, you know, that we're still moving in that direction of the Entrepreneur Center.
Sure, and when you envision an MOU, you envision between the government and the university that the intention is really there to, you know, come back to.
Yeah. Yes, and I want to make sure that, you know, we have someone at the table working with this, such as yourself, because we're going to be in this for a while, right? I don't know how long it takes to for the university to be in a better position. So as long as, you know, we have someone that's helping, I think that would be.
So I'm glad you brought this up. I didn't know that we would come to this level of detail in the meeting, but, you know, looking at the monies that are available and what really may be the need here, I haven't heard President Clark or anyone say anything other than it would be fantastic to have an entrepreneurship center and probably so many other things that universities would desire to have, but we can't really accomplish that right now. So you tell me if I'm wrong, but I imagine committing to doing that at some point in the future would be within your reach. And then secondly, what I would say about working with lenders and so forth, put a little bit of meat on the bones here. Since we don't know exactly what the timing of student enrollment will be, and much less the payment of that we're mentioning here, determining exactly what the need of the university will be over that period of time is a real challenge. So if the answer were we're going to start seeing some money sooner rather than later, then you can come back to this purpose of business schooling and so forth sooner. If it looks like it's going to be longer, we may need to get into a different relationship. Today, they've got a line of credit with a major lending institution. It has covenants on it that would be very difficult to meet under these circumstances, much less if this goes on much longer. It could turn out to be the preference of that lender to say, we would like to enter into an arrangement for you to collateralize more credit that we will lend to you, which would be really doing the same thing I think that Councilmember Johnston mentioned doing with Pathway, I know you've worked with in the past. With those covenants that are today, those lenders have rights, and they may have an objection to the way the money comes and have preference one way or the other. To really do a great job with this, we're going to need to be flexible and really work with them and recognize what are the needs of the university, what are the restrictions they're going to have with this lender, and then as we look at attracting other donors and things that they may want to do in terms of supporting their own monies into an entrepreneurship center or just something else in the university, having that flexibility is going to be really, really important.
Can we create a flexible MOU?
Yeah, I think we can. Would you be open to that?
That's up to you all.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is a fair question or not, but there are roughly 1,000 students waiting to know if they can come back or enroll as freshmen.
No, we have currently an enrollment of 1,000. We just had commencement, lost about 150, 160. Right now, for those who want to return, many of them don't have their financial aid letters yet. Waiting for that data. But what was unique for us this year with the number of interest expressed in attending Fisk University, We don't know why, because those students have not shown up yet, but we usually have on average about 7,000 students express an interest in attending the institution. As of our board meeting yesterday, that number was over 15,000.
But my question is, roughly, you'll have 1,200 students on
That's right.
campus. Of those, only 10% know that they're coming because of
That's
financial
right.
shortfall. When we
Because of
expand the
letters.
scope, right, when we expand the scope under your direction, we'll be able to fund those kids that don't know?
No, we're not looking at funding all of the kids that don't know, but this is going to be a gradual, because every day we're able to determine how many more letters we can get, and then those students are responsible for determining how they fund their gap.
Yeah, the gap.
Exactly, exactly.
So the MOU that we're talking about, and I guess the question is more to sort of get some clarification. So what would the MOU be about? Would the MOU be about the intent to reclaim some of those funds on like a 0% sort of loan type thing, so that we could then go back and say, okay, are we gonna go back and do Burris Hall or not? Or is it to say, we just have the best of intentions to do the Burris Hall Entrepreneurship Center, but best of intentions really has no meat on it? Like, so what's your thought process on the MOU?
The first.
Is to reclaim some of those funds as a.
Yeah, even, I think it would be great to do, I'm for zero interest.
Me too.
I think that they need the money immediately. I think this committee and the groups that had been working on the Entrepreneurship Center had a specific vision, right? Don't know what the timeline for recouping those funds looked like, right? It could take years, it could take, a year or two. I don't know. I'm not prepared to offer a specific timeline. I think we need to be flexible when it comes to that, but I want to make sure that, we're able to come back to the table, look at where the university is. Are we able to get this entrepreneur center off the ground like many people have intended to do already, right?
Yeah, so I think right now, the Entrepreneur Center is so far back burner because we've got something on fire right now that we have to put out. And so while the intent is there, it's not on anybody's radar, is what I'm gathering. It's a great idea, we want to get to it, it's all that, but right now, it's like, nobody's contemplating that at this point. They're just trying to figure out how are we gonna get these
Which is
tuition
fair,
dollars
right?
in.
So we go back to the question about priority. Is it going to be a priority in the future? I don't know. If it's not going to be a priority, then I think it would be great to know that, so we stop having this discussion about the Entrepreneur Center.
But you probably can't even say that yet. Like, you're still figuring out where the light switches are. I do think, though, if we put the burden on Kevin or Director Crumbo, that you're in charge of the workout plan that will get you on the footing that in a year, 2 years, 10 years, then we navigate back to doing even bigger things than we've done in 150 years.
Yeah, I just think, the question right now is this a grant? Is this something that the Metro government should do in the first place? I think most people in this room are gonna say yes to that, so we'll answer that yes. Yes, this is something that we should do. Should it be a loan or a grant? Should there be some accountability to it? And I don't mean accountability from their perspective, I mean accountability to our taxpayers. These dollars, what if we put $10 million or $8.5 million into M&PS for 80,000 students, right? I mean, are there better uses of those funds? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, there's lots of answers to that, but that's, I think, where I'm trying to figure out is, that's why I would like for it to be structured as a loan. They can't answer that right now because there's covenants around their current creditors and this, that, and the other. So I think it may be worth taking some extra time, and I'm not talking about come back in 3 months. I'm talking about a week or two or however long it would take to figure out what those covenants and restrictions are on your current lenders, on how we can structure something that is very, very flexible through Pathway that we already have a fantastic relationship with, 0% loan, line of credit, use it as you need it. If you end up only needing $3 million of it because FAFSA figures it out earlier, then great. Then we've got, 5+ that we can, pull back. I mean, I have a problem saying, well, we're in this bind, because there's lots of people that are in binds, and just giving the money without so when I go to my neighbors and I go, yeah, almost $10 million is going to this, and they go, well, I've got potholes, right? I mean, there's lots of needs in the city, so I just would like to be able to say, listen, this is a historic institution that has given so much to this city. We there's a sort of an ethical duty to it, which I understand, but at the same time, it's our ethical duty to make sure that these dollars are being spent wisely and at least have the intent of recouping those dollars at a 0% loan, if that makes sense.
If we broaden the scope and put it under your responsibility, I think you can answer all those questions, everything that we want to do without any delay. What I hear is every day we delay, there is a child deciding not to go to college. That's a bad position to be in. I was a first-generation college student. My financial aid, I white-knuckled it when I opened it. I was like, oh, shoot. I'm not going to school this semester. I'm seriously.
Yeah.
That's what kids are facing. Giving this to you today changes that. One kid's outcome's worth 1,000 potholes. I mean, I'm in. Me and Queen Victoria, we're in for music school. So, got it, you're welcome.
Yeah, again. One thing, what's the turnaround time if there was MOU for these funds released?
So I want to distinguish here, an MOU is not a loan agreement. What I thought you were driving at is more or less really, I think most people look at it as the intention that, we'd like to come back to, the Entrepreneurship Center when it's financially feasible to do that. Very difficult to put a timeline on that. In terms of making this a loan from the Metro government to Fisk bumps into the issues that you were articulating there, and I really don't know how long it will take to do that. I also don't know how the lenders will react to the standing of the Metro government as, on the one hand, a grantee at this moment. On the other hand, I think if we did a loan, we would be looking at some sort of collateral arrangement with them. And this lender is JP Morgan. I mean, it's one of the largest in the world, and I would expect that that's going to take, some time to work through. And I don't think that their portfolio and their review of this is going to be limited to Fisk. I think they've got a lot out there that this would need to be consistent with. So I wish I could tell you today this is a local lender. We can walk over there tomorrow and maybe take down by lunch, but I just don't think it's feasible that we could pull that off.
So we're either giving the money or we're not.
Wait,
That's what I said.
we're coming to the table with the MOU.
I don't know
If I
how
could ask President.
I'm looking at our legal department, and I don't know that you can embed an MOU into this grant. I don't.
Yeah, I think that's something that we would really have to think about, and I think it wouldn't really be an MOU, because when you say the word MOU, that usually, what that means is interdepartmental. Metro and Metro, like Parks giving money to schools, or Parks giving money to water.
Call it an agreement, call it
It would be a
whatever you want.
participation agreement. It would require like an ordinance.
Tara, stop me, but I would almost see it more as including in the whereas the intention would be, you could memorialize it, but that's all that.
But that has no meat and really no meaning. It's not worth the ink that it's used to print, to be honest.
I want to talk about it.
If it were a participation agreement, you could tie strings to it, but I think that would be two things. Like, it would be the ARP funds and it would be a PA or participation agreement, and that would also require an ordinance versus if you just gave the money, if you just reallocated through the ARP, you would give that through resolution. That's one reading, which means they would get the money faster. And the PA, we would have to work out, terms, like when they're gonna give it back, what's the interest rate, how they would give it back. And so that requires a larger level of collaboration.
Are you open to that payback discussion?
So would the money come back to Metro? Or
Yep.
would it go towards the
No, it'll come back to
building,
Metro.
the
It'll come back
Burris
to Metro.
Hall? Well, I'm not sure. I mean,
think
have we done that
Representative
to
Love
any
had a
other?
question.
Have we done that with any other?
He's trying to be nice and go by the rules.
Well, I just got out of a rough session, so I'm trying not to be like I was downtown. And my question was about what gets the money faster, so you've kind of answered that. So which one is it again? Which one gets the money faster?
It would be just a reallocation through this body, because those are legally can go by resolution, which is one reading of the Metro Council, and we can write that and it can be approved after one reading. If you go the other route, there's the negotiation, then that's 3 readings of the Metro Council after you agree on the terms. Typical participation agreements.
And I'll point out, I just also want to point out that while the $10 million has been appropriated, We have been doing installments with all of the grant contracts. 2.5 million has been advanced. So anything beyond that has to come back for really approval from the Director of Finance, is the way we're proposing that this remaining funds. So we would be repurposing, we would be changing the scope of work for $8.9 million that remains. And some of that is already in possession of Fisk, but the 7.5 million, any additional would be approved through the Finance Director as spent.
So any unneeded funds then get returned back to the same pool we've been doing all along.
Yeah.
Right. So we do recapture.
Yes.
I think we should explore a participation agreement. I'm not saying we should hold up a resolution. Like, if the body's comfortable going ahead, filing a resolution and working on a participation agreement to not stop this timeline, I'm good with that, right? I do want there to be, I do want the money, to come back. I want either our finance director or someone from Metro to be at the table with Fisk, working through this process and however long that takes, right? If it's, it's a commitment from the city, right? We're potentially talking 10, 20 years, whatever that looks like. The city needs to participate in this process and, keep tabs and keep accountable of where the funds are. I don't know if a specific payback date needs to be figured out, or if we come back at a later date and that gets either extended, if that would work. We could always put, 10, 15, 20 years and then extend if needed, if we're close.
Questions? When we say bring the money back, we're talking about bringing ARP funding back to Metro, which has to be spent by 2026. So how does that work? Second question, have we done any, payback? I would understand if you were saying the money would come back once they're financially solvent, would go back to the building of Burris Hall. But the idea that it would come back to Metro, I'm not sure how that would work.
I think the original intent of the 10 million is to be used on Fisk no matter what, right? So if at some point the priority is not Burris Hall and figuring out what the new priority is, my whole thought process is the 10 million being used for Fisk. That is what we're allocating this for. That is the cause we decided to put it in, right? I don't know if
There isn't really a vehicle for bringing the money back. What ARP funds will allow is a grant. The way we did it with Pathway was those were loans to small businesses, but we provided the grant funds to Pathway. That money is not coming back.
so we would have to go through Pathway to receive funds.
But that's again going into a loan, and we can't do that right now. Not with their current covenants. We're not looking at a loan. The proposal is for a grant to.
Okay.
I would be, I understand what you're saying, Councilmember, and so I think the idea or a participation agreement or a whereas in the resolution would to say that once the university is solvent, the funding would then go back to the, and I don't know that we have to name Burris Hall as, as the definite place where it has to go, but it would go into the infrastructure or into the university, into the campus, as we're saying. I think would be honoring the initial intent of the $10 million allocation in the beginning. The fact that it would, because they're wanting to use it now to bridge gaps for student financial aid. However, as the school becomes more solvent, then that money does need to go to the construction or to the master plan, infrastructure master plan, but to the university, to the campus, not back to Metro or any other entity, Pathway or anywhere else.
Sorry,
I just want to let Ms. Daniel go.
So I feel like that this conversation is taking on a whole lot of different possible paths. And I just want to say that The reason that I voted for this to begin with was because 1% of venture capital goes to people of color. And I felt of all the places for us to cultivate a tech incubation center, it would be Fisk. But hearing what we've heard today, the priority should be to save Fisk. The other pieces should fall into place. If there is some kind of way that we can continue to be active, it is once Fisk has stabilized in terms of its financial position, then we return to the goal of having a premier institution in this area that prepares minority and underrepresented communities to be able to participate in this tech ecosystem that we're building here. But I don't see where the money would come back to the city. I just think that perhaps once we get to a stabilization point, that we reconsider from that point how we get to building out this Burris Hall.
I just don't think that's a possibility. I think once the money is gone, because like she said, they're going to use the overwhelming majority, if not all of these dollars on this tuition gap that they've got right now. So that money's going to be gone, and we're going to be in the same situation. We don't have another $10 million. We don't have any more ARPA funds. It's not coming out of operations. It's not going to come out of our capital budget. So they're going to be in a situation of ground zero, looking at Burris Hall going, it has to be renovated. We have to figure out this entrepreneur center, the operations, yada, yada. That, from Metro's perspective, the Burris Hall thing is over. It's not happening. Not from our perspective. They can probably figure it out, like I'm saying, with businesses around and some sort of endowment, whatever. Like, that's a possibility in the future, but it's not something that Metro is going to subsidize because we don't have that money anymore. It's going to tuition. It's over with. So that's my concern about it, is that it's not going to the original goal. It's never going to go to the original goal. We cannot recapture those funds. We're going to bail out a university that's deserving, no question about it. My concern is about the accountability and being good stewards of these one-time tax dollars when no other private university, understood, no endowments and all that, but no other private university would we do that for, with no guarantee that in the fall or when these dollars run out, the FAFSA is going to have it, figured out by then. So are we still going to be just at this cliff where they just fall off, which is sort of what we've had in the other situations with daycare and all this kind of stuff, where we go, let's figure out the sustainability thing, and it wouldn't happen. So now we're just at a worse cliff than they were, because. So that's my problem with it. I actually have to go. So I can't vote, but I would abstain.
Mary Jo,
Yeah, I just wanted to give Director Crumbo, did you have a response, or you? Director Crumbo, did you want to enter? Okay.
Yeah, I just kind of want to, and this is sort of following up on what Courtney said, I just kind of want to reframe what really is happening. I mean, in an ideal world, we can work on a, some sort of compromise agreement, MOU or whatever, but as a practical matter, if you've got a financially challenged university that's got lending arrangements, anything that we come up with that, quote, has teeth or substance, even if the lender were to approve it, which is something that is not something that is likely because it would be so vague and unclear as to its application, then possibilities of getting additional lending in the future would be burdened by whatever the ambiguous MOU, said. The thought of, trying to fund something on campus and have this sort of hanging over it and being explained. I also think that the prospects of getting through council with it, think of, if we're having this much trouble trying to put our hands around, think about the whole council trying to get their arms around it. They haven't had the benefits of several hours of discussion. I think that the way Courtney framed the issue is correct. What we're trying to do is we're making a decision. I won't use some of the language she used because I look at it a little bit differently, but we're making a decision now. We provided a grant to Fisk. They now want to repurpose it. We're getting other repurpose requests today. The penalty of asking for a repurpose is not that you got to pay it back to Metro. It's something just for us to consider as to whether or not we think it is something that we would like to recommend that the council support. And, yes, do I wish that we had Burris Hall, we had a big entrepreneur center with Darrell Freeman's name on it, and that all that additional fundraising that was, suggested could be obtained, had been obtained? Yes, that is not where we are. What we're making an investment in is new leadership at Fisk, a bridge to the culture of philanthropy, and a bridge to the FAFSA clarity coming in terms of our enrollment for the fall. And I do think that we, as a committee, we will continue to be engaged for a couple more years, should get updates on what is happening. But I just don't think there is an agreement with a hard and fast covenant that we can obtain that makes any sense in this context. We need to decide whether we want to support Fisk and take their word that keeping the money and using it to renovate Burris Hall is not their highest and best use, and let them determine the highest and best use.
Yeah.
Oh, you were next.
Yeah, so she does for some clarification earlier, and two things. One is I could not have said that better, and so coming back to the original ask that I had here, it is to broaden the scope of the grant, to have the authority to start working with Fisk on that highest and best use and sustain the university. If at some point in the future it's feasible for them to come back to Burris Hall as it was originally envisioned, that would be fabulous. But between here and there are entrepreneurs, folks just like you were speaking of here, that they put their hearts into this, and there are things easily within our reach here to help them continue that and even have a home at Fisk and be able to work from there and work with others in the community. So I don't view that as a loss. It will certainly be a change for them, but in the end, I believe that the highest and best use is to sustain this university for all the reasons that we have mentioned here, and I like the authority to go do that. It will not be my intent to write a check on day one, wire it, or any other means, but rather to work with President Clark, work with the board, determine what those needs are, and let's meet those needs as best we can up to the amount that this committee has authorized. I look at Fisk as a business in and of itself. It is in the business of educating, and it is the ultimate entrepreneur of Nashville. It is the first university here, and so much of what is Music City would not be here without those efforts. It's 1,000 kids, just like Sean described, that are trying to get into education. There are hundreds of people that work there that need a job, and I just think this is the right thing to do. So my ask is to move this forward without a loan arrangement, participation, however named, but let's use this money to sustain the organization.
And I just have one question, President. You had a visit in February from the Department of the Interior.
Yes.
What was that about?
So because of the historical overlay by which the institution exists, when there are issues on campus with these historic buildings, we turn to the Department of Interior first because they're the only, believe it or not, federal division that trains and certifies individuals who can work and restore historic structures. We were having significant leaks in one of our historic buildings, and so the Department of Interior did come in and patch it up, and they're in the process now of finalization of repairing that roof. They did stop the leaks. Now the next step in that process is that there was some damage done to the Aaron Douglas murals in that building. So now those need to be restored.
How did they describe the campus?
How did they describe the campus?
I was told there was a comment made about it, the campus itself being a museum.
Oh, absolutely, yes. The way that the Deputy Secretary to Interior actually came to visit the campus because she had heard so much about the institution, and she said that just from standing on the Grove, that the entire institution looked like a museum to her, and that it was an imperative that the Department of Interior continues to work with Fisk to make sure that these levels of restorations continue to take place, because she has not been able to see buildings that old, still standing, still functional, and still being used by the institution.
Thank you.
It's been here a long time.
Yes.
It's not my job to call your question for you.
Yeah, I was ready to make a motion. So I move that we change the scope of the grant that was given to Fisk to, so they could be able to I don't know how to word it, address some of the shortfalls that they have come across.
Sustainability. Second, any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in favor, 0 against.
Thank you all. I know these are tough decisions you've made for a long time over literally hundreds of millions of monies that have come to the Metro government. And I do want to talk about the cliff that I've heard just as a parting word. The Metro government has successfully solved the cliff of this public school system, and I think you're going to hear from Dr. Battle soon that we are amongst the best in the nation for getting the bridge built from one place to another. If the Metro Public Schools can do that under a watch, I'm confident this will as well, and it will put an enormous responsibility on you as a new leader to go find other monies to match up to ours, but I'm really hopeful that the leadership of this government is going to help you do that.
Thank you.
Councilwoman
Thank you all.
Campbell, may I presume you would like to be lead sponsor?
I would love to, although
You could be lead, is that?
But also
I came back to visit when you were here.
See you. Okay, awesome.
Always recognize your face in glasses.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you all.
See ya.
Yeah, I know, I still have a lot to talk about.
thank you.
I was trying to tell you to be quick. You think so? Yeah, I hope you're right. I think so. It was a long discussion and everything else.
Bridge builder? What's that, Robert Moore? You're a bridge builder now, man.
This is the work we do.
Jennifer's taking the lead. She can bake into that, just the reporting back and it's sort of just the, whatever the interaction's going to be with Metro Finance. To just,
Essentially, Kevin's going to be improving any requests based on.
so whatever that relationship is, it's that, I assume that she'll take care of that in the resolution. We don't need to get into those details.
But I'm making sure that that's in there. All right. I should not make promises, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and promise that everything else is gonna be so much easier. The next four
Just jinxes.
contract, I may have, but the next four contract amendments are all extensions of the date to use the funds. We'll talk about one that's a little bit more, that does have a grant spending change, but I do promise, I think the rest will be much simpler. The first one on the agenda is 50 Forward, the Bordeaux Collaborative. If you recall, we did provide a grant for the construction of a collaborative senior center, and the 50 Forward is the lead of that, along with Creative Girls Rock, and there will be other nonprofits housed in the building. They would like to extend the date of the use of the funds. So they're currently expire 9/30, and they'd like 9/30/24, and they would like to extend the use of the funds to June 30th of 26.
June 30th. And it's just construction?
Just construction. There was a delay. You do have just a brief summary that talks about just slower to get started, whether, and this is what we've heard from most of our nonprofit partners. Some of it's been slow to launch programs. In this case, it was slower to break ground. They're just about to. She does, we heard from Sally Hussey, she does believe that they'll be finished at 12/31/25. She just said, let me build in a little bit of a cushion.
So they're relocating this summer so that ground can be broken this fall and then hopefully done the next year.
So no change in amount, no change in use, just an extension for the date of use. Any questions on that?
Move to extend deadline to June 30, 2026.
All in favor? Any opposition? Sponsors?
Sponsors, sorry.
I'll do the fifth one.
You're gonna be the lead on that. Anybody, you wanna be on that too, though?
Oh, yes.
Next, we have Nashville State Community College with their workforce development program. Similar to what we've heard from Oaks. It was a very slow start for them, but we've been in constant communication. Wade follows up with all of our nonprofits. on a regular basis to get any spending updates. When we don't get those spending updates, or if we get them and there's very little spending, then we say what's going on. So we've been working with them, and they are finally kind of hitting their stride. So again, they would like to extend the use of the funds, but they did also request a change in the grant spending plan, which I did not give you in the email, and I apologize for that. But in the packet that you had, and I can explain it, you don't necessarily have to see it, but you do have a sheet that looks like this. And this is from I'll focus your attention to, the change comes from the salaries and wages line down to other non-personal. And in their description, what you hear is the mobile classroom that they had planned is much more expensive. So
That's other non-personnel.
So that's kind of where we've been putting a lot of the capital. So the increase there, what was the exact 380?
I think it's about 450, or no, sorry.
470.
470? Yeah, it was
470.
470, and then it's gonna be another 455 to get to the 925.
Yeah, 455. So it's really a shift from compensation and benefits down to other non-personnel capital. And that 455 is to invest in a mobile classroom, which was always part of the plan. They just had not really received the quotes from the vendor.
So just to be clear, they're wanting to move the 455,000 from salaries and wages into non-other personnel for
Yeah.
the mobile clinic.
Yep, for the mobile classroom, and then extend the length of the use of all of the funds to June 30th of '26.
Okay, I'll make a motion.
I have a motion, second. Any other questions?
I just had one comment, which is, when these plans are proposed to us, everybody's kind of using their best thoughts and ideas of what will work, and then sometimes it comes to reality, sometimes it doesn't. It certainly doesn't bother me that we're reducing personnel costs and increasing the cost of doing the mobile clinic, but you also, I think it's important to just check with them and just make sure, that's, given where we are, that's gonna be the most effective way to achieve what their, initial intent was, because at some point, the cost-benefit analysis changes, because that's a really significant shift in that piece of it, in terms of how you reach the people you're trying to reach. So I just would want to make sure that they've already done that analysis, as opposed to just feeling like they need to fit the dollars based on what's happened.
I would say that they conveyed that quite well.
They did,
in the
okay,
conversations that they have. And so many of the nonprofits, when we've gone to, several have asked for changes in the grant spending plan. And we typically just approve that because they'll say, we didn't put any money in for a conference, but now we want to do this training for these new case managers. Could we shift $10,000 from this line to that line? I'm not bringing those dollars back to the committee because they're relatively immaterial to the total grant. This was just one of the larger shifts along with the extended use. But in our conversations with them, I think a lot of our nonprofit partners, when they initially they just kind of went, here's all the people that we would need. And then they were slow to kick off, but also said, oh, I don't actually need all those extra people. I can actually get more folks into this workforce development if I can have a classroom that can move around. I don't need, multiple people. I need more of the mobile classroom.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. Okay, so we had a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? I'm gonna go 5 in favor, 0 against.
And the lead. You want that one?
All right. Big Brothers Big Sisters of Middle Tennessee, you have their summary. They are really meeting this fall to complete, to really hit their metrics. So their current grant expires September 30th, but they need the entire semester. So they're asking to go through 12/31/24, so just a 3-month extension for the one-on-one mentoring program. So if you see in the summary, they've been able to do some of the micro-mentoring, but they really didn't get to the one-on-one with the students. So that is now in place, and so this fall, when the students come back, this is a partnership with TSU. They'll be able to complete that.
Question, that seems like a short amount of time when they actually would have until the end of 2025. Have you
We
asked
did
them
ask them
about
if they went
that?
longer, but they were confident that they would meet. Now,
There was a personnel gap, though. Was it someone left, no one filled the position?
yep,
So that's why I think they're going to be able to pick
so I
it
think
up.
they're teed up and ready to go. They kind of literally just need the students to come back on campus. Now, if they don't expend all of the funds, they might come and ask for a longer time because it went well, and they'll do a second cohort. I can't guess, but
But right now,
But I'm pretty good at guessing.
They're confident with 2024.
that they can hit that they'll hit the metrics that they put in the original contract by that date.
We'll exceed them.
They could exceed it.
I'll move that we approve this.
Okay.
Second.
Second, any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 6 in favor, 0 against. Councilman Gamble or Sepulveda?
Do you want that one or do you
Sure.
want?
Which one is it? Yes.
Big Brother.
Okay. And our last one is Urban League of Middle Tennessee, and we do have some folks here if you all have questions. Very similar in just a slow launch. You have all of the details currently, and then you had kind of a one-page summary of the request. And that is to extend the use of the funds to 6/30/26.
I do have one question, and it's just, there's a statement in the letter that the numbers of people served have been higher than expected, like 3,147. What is sort of the definition of served in that capacity?
So they've come into the office and we've done an intake on them, and we've done some type of service, whether it's resume preparation or mock interviews, or coaching them to make applications to various jobs, as well as some soft skills training, or referring them out to other partners, such as Nashville State, or Project Return, or 413 Strong, those kind of referrals as well.
So they're basically people that just get active in the system to try to participate in the program. That's a big number.
I'm glad you all are working with the MC3 program. How close are y'all to finalizing that agreement?
We've just started. We expect to finalize it very quickly.
And I will say, we did not anticipate the time that it would take to get other organizations to come into a collaborative partnership where we are funding them to do the work that they're already doing, right? So it just goes to show that the level of mistrust that has gone on in Nashville for quite a while, and now we're breaking down those barriers.
Great. Motion to approve. Oh, well, there are no other questions.
Any other questions? Questions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I have to abstain.
Okay, so we have 5 in favor, 0 against, and 1 abstention. Okay. Next, we have reallocation of existing funds that were previously allocated. And we have folks here to explain it probably better than I can, but I'll give the quick overview. You have a sheet that was sent and also provided in front of you. We had 3 different previous resolutions. One was pathway to equitable ownership. One was housing opportunities for older adults. And then one was just a really small piece. I'll go back for those that remember. We had, thank you, we had $40,200,000 for some affordable housing. 20 went to Barnes, 20 million went to Catalyst, and there was 200,000 for some software. And turns out that software was actually available through another platform. It didn't have to be duplicated. So those are the 3 original resolutions that were passed by this committee and our council. You can see in the comments a brief description of the more significant amounts. The 9.5 million was allocated and 1.2 million, and how much was actually spent. Only 760 out of the first one, none of the 1.2 million. So, and we've got folks here that can answer more questions about that, but what we're proposing to happen is to take that 10.1 million that is not anticipated to be spent on those original items and reallocate that to two different pieces of work. One is Barnes Fund, and Angie can explain better, but in the most recent round of funding, there were more applications than there was funding available. So they had some really good applications that they wish they could have funded but couldn't. So, and I don't think the 5.2 even covers all of those. It would just get more of those applications. We'll come back to that. The other piece that we would be asking to fund is the Strobel Center, which April will give us more information on, which is set to open very shortly. It is long-term supportive housing. It's really something that we've been working on for quite a while. It got a little stalled during COVID. I think it came out of Mayor Briley's.
Barry.
Go even further, Barry.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, wow. Okay, I thought it was Wiley. Yeah, so that was first announced back then. It had a little bit of a slowdown during COVID, but some really needed long-term housing solutions for our homeless population with a lot of wraparound services. So that's the really short of it, and then I'm gonna let you guys answer the questions because the experts are here. Go ahead.
So this is where you jinxed us.
Well, I kind of was referring to just the other contract amendments.
So I really want to defer this, and I'll give my reason why. I want the money to stay in housing, but we have an issue right now where we have so many new arrivals and asylum seekers that are growing unhoused population. We're going to be in a tough spot pretty soon. We have new arrivals that are coming via different ways. Some get put on planes. They are given a map to the rescue mission and they end up there. I have had situations where at my previous employer, 2 people from Venezuela showed up. They refused to stay at the shelter. There is a lack of people who speak Spanish. There is cultural barriers, right? And they were dropped off at our place and we took them over to the Turk office where they stayed a couple of days. We have one pastor who has rented homes in Davidson County, and as people come in, as they are taught English, as they are found jobs because they are asylum seekers, right? So they have the paperwork to be able to find employment. They are moved, they find permanent housing, and then a new group of people come in. And priority has been given to families. There are a number of single males who arrive who have nowhere to go. Turk has changed their policy where they have now allowed for people to just hang out during the day, charge their phones. If there's food, they give them food because there's nowhere for them to go. Some of the people that had housing lined up with family members, a good number of them are now being kicked out. We are not set up in any way, shape, or form like other cities where they have intake for this specific category of people. So I cannot say, hey, the last of the money that's supposed to address the unhoused population, let's go ahead and allocate the rest of it without having a plan for the new arrivals. I am all for keeping this in the same bucket to go to housing and to go to the unhoused population, but I want that plan in place first. And I'm not willing to not move forward with the deferral, because let me tell you how I've been burned my Metro before. When I've asked for a deferral on something, they're like, yes, we'll get to it, and then it never happens. And when such a vulnerable population has not been addressed and is relying on a handful of people, I cannot, in good conscience, move forward without that being addressed first. I have had stories where they're telling me, you know, we walked for 3 months from Venezuela to the Texas border, and in that course of time, a young woman carried around her dead baby for 3 days. And these are not unique stories in any sense of the word. The people that we are coming in contact with, the people that we are having conversations with, it's critical right now, and I know that Turk and former council member Sledge are currently working on a plan to try and find a solution, and the mayor's office is aware, and the new director for the Office of New American and Indigenous People is aware. And so really I don't want to hold it up a whole lot, but I think a 1 meeting deferral would give us enough time to get a couple of things in place.
So one question I'm going to ask April is, what is the date that the Strobel Center will be available?
The Strobel Center is nearing completion. Thank you for having us. I guess I should start with all of that. It's nearing completion, and we're looking to have a soft opening June 17th. We have a couple of pieces of legislation that will go before Metro Council on a little bit of startup cost, and then working on the agreement with the provider that's going to provide the supportive services and the property management component as well. I had a brief conversation with Lisa Turks, and the amount that she is requesting is nearly close to $300K. She still doesn't have a plan that's hammered out, and I have agreed to meet with her and Urban Housing Solutions, which is one of our partnering agencies.
Are you saying related to?
Related to this conversation, yes. So Lisa Turks, related to Council Lady Sepulveda's conversation. And Lisa Turks is partnering with Urban Housing Solutions. Mercury Courts is one of the properties that our office is responsible for completing or providing the supportive service, providing the clients for through our coordinated entry process. So we're familiar with this process. I think a 1 meeting deferral would really delay some of the things that we've already started to put into place for another vulnerable population, the chronically homeless individuals that's languished outside an average of 5 years, some 10 to 15 years or longer. And so I would ask that we not do a deferral, but definitely I'm committed to working with Lisa Turks. We have some other funding that we could utilize to help make that department whole. This also lands on my desk when folks that are immigrants or refugees that end up at the mission. So I know the Venezuelan population that Council Lady Sepulveda is speaking of, and I've worked with the mission to help with making recommendations. And in my office, we're committed to bringing on people that help with being able to speak different languages that can help with the situation as well. So I am committed to working with Lisa Turks and Urban Housing Solutions. I think I asked her for all 3 of us to meet, and the Mercury Courts program. Not sure of how many that will serve or the length of time it will take to bring something like that on, but I would not want to defer this process for the sake of...
And I don't know if it's going to make sense to split the two, so I'm going to ask Angie the same question about the applications that were received from Barnes. This is not probably the right word, but do they expire in any way? Is there a time frame for which those applications
Well, these are, the ones that we would propose to fund with this would be shovel-ready, and we're talking at least upward of 200 to 300 units that we can put in the pipeline, because what this is a pipeline issue. The more affordable units we can get on the ground as fast as possible, the more it frees up other things. Councilmember Sepulveda, we're still committed to all these funds to be available regardless of immigration status. So, and the applicants are also still required to do the affirmative marketing so that we can reach the populations that are least likely to hear about or access housing. These were, when we originally developed this, and you made a good point, we thought of great ideas up early on, and then in application we realized we were too narrow. The equitable homeownership, we still want to keep in that equitable homeownership space, just expand it beyond shared equity. We have a really good solid applications in that homeownership space. We're losing homeownership, we're losing working families. We need to keep these and get them on the ground. This developer, site control, zoning in place, capital stack ready, just this gap financing. Then the older adults, we have some proposals for older adults apartments. This is just moving away from this shared improvement rehab piece and really getting more units on the ground for older adults. So we're still keeping it in those lanes, just opening up from this narrow scope that we originally had. Yeah.
Thank you for that, and thank you for bringing that issue, Councilmember Sepulveda, to this committee. My question is there a way to incorporate, and I think Ms. Calvin mentioned that there are already discussions, there's been a suggested amount of $300,000 that could at least get the program started and going. You mentioned that there is a way to take funding. Where would that funding come from? And my second question is there a way to incorporate a dedicated funding out of this, or to include in this restructuring of the resolution that population specifically in that address that need?
So one part for us, we have some, I don't know if you want to pass this, let me go through that. We have ARPA funds from the $25 million that was allocated to us early on, and I believe out of the $9 million portion of those funds, we have $220,000 that have not been allocated at this point in time. 220 that have not been allocated from the supportive service column. There was a $9 million allotment there. So we could start with that, and then in the next budget season, looking at our care persons line item to put the combination of the two.
To that, one other thing, and Wade will check me on the number, but I think there's $272,000 that has actually already been awarded by this committee and approved by council, that when we went to contract with Turk, they did not, I don't know, this is in the weeds, but this committee will remember it because we've lived in the weeds. Remember the 13%? So we made some awards right at the end of June 22. We had only received the first tranche of the ARP funds. And so we couldn't fully fund those requests. As soon as we got the second tranche, we went back and gave, I think it was Turk, Legal Aid Society, and Connexion, the additional 13%. And Turk, they did not need that 13% for that. When we went back more recently and extended that work with both immigration support and right to counsel for eviction prevention. We asked them, do you want to incorporate that into this round? They still did not need it for that specific work. So it is possible, I'm gonna come back to the deferral, that there is some, if you've got about 220, we know that Turk, and I mean this, they have access to another 272. It has to be under contract, but it's already been awarded to them. So there is some funds. But what I wanted to also, the concern might be that I don't want Strobel Center to be available and no funding. There is no funding in the current FY '25 budget.
I thought you just said there was resolutions coming to council.
There's resolutions coming out of our '24 budget that we set aside for the startup costs because we were hoping that we would have a clear path in '25 budget for Strobel Center.
So how far do those funds that are set?
It's really startup. That resolution will be in front of you. I think it's 2 or 4 months.
4 months.
It's a 4 month, just startup costs, so that as they start to move people in, she can already have staff in place. So
if this had to be split, the committee could do that. I mean, we could reallocate a portion of this today and then come back to the remaining pieces. I don't know that if those projects go away if they're not on the June 4th council meeting, but.
One of the concerns, just making sure we meet the obligation and the expenditure deadlines. These are construction projects, so that's a sensitive thing. If I could speak to one more thing, Councilmember Sepulveda, I don't think you were at the meeting when we briefed council on the unified housing strategy that we're kicking off. We just hired a consultant. This is a deep look at all of our housing needs, and we've asked the consultant to include immigrants, refugees coming in, what their housing needs are, what the impact is on our housing market, so our overall housing strategy, and this report will be wrapped up in November. We'll have that holistic look that can inform metro budget decisions over the long term. And we'll be doing deep community engagement and be reaching out to the council members to help us with that, so we can really understand. So that will be built into our housing strategy.
That's great going forward.
Yes.
My priority is now.
Right, I understand.
What do I do now? So I guess I'm fine letting Barnes continue with that. If we hold at least $500K just to make sure, and then once we have Turk come back to the table, if they're not gonna use those other funds, reallocate those funds, and then we could
I think we have the 500. I think we have
Right, the
220
220.
plus the 272, 490.
Yeah, but we would have to reallocate the Turk one, right? So we can't do that now. It wasn't on.
No, but what I'm saying is, there's probably a better term, but like that money is already like appropriated, meaning it's available, but nobody else could come in the next meeting and grab it. It's already appropriated to Turk. So we would actually do a new scope of work.
They would have to come back.
And then the rest of the amount.
And then the other 220 is already been awarded to OHS, to the Office of Homeless Services, and they would have that available to combine with that 272.
And is there a commitment to combine?
From me today, there is a commitment to combine.
So there's, I don't know that that's enough,
So
but
that's what I'm saying.
I'm
So
just saying.
who knows if 300K is the final number?
500.
Well, it would be 500.
Well, there's 500
Both.
available, so if they get to 300K, there's even some cushion.
But, I mean, I get your point, though.
Yeah, I'm
Do
not
we
trying to
know
push anything,
Do
I'm
we
just
know
making sure.
if Turk, I mean, it seems like they would want to use that for.
They
if
have
that is an
not
urgent-
contracted that amount,
but we can reach out to them and suggest that they can use that funding. And then
100%.
along with the 220 that's
I just think we
remaining.
need to have a discussion with them at the end of the day, right? Is that money gonna be used for what it was intended? Maybe it's not, and then we could just, well, they're not here.
Oh, well, I mean, I have emails, I can forward them to you.
But I guess there is a concern, if I can say, there is a concern about deferring this with the Strobel Center opening in less than a month. And not, I don't, you say defer one meeting, is the meeting gonna be
We don't
next
have
week,
another,
or-
no, we don't have another meeting set, and I don't know that our next meeting could get in front of, we'd have to get in front of the second council meeting in order for
This
that.
goes back to me getting burned by Metro in the past, right? So I'm fine allocating the barns. I'm fine allocating for Strobel, keeping a portion of the money just to get everything in place and then making it whole, right? I'm not talking about the entire funds. It's more than, it's 4.9 million. I'm talking about a small percentage of the 4.9 million to make sure it happens.
So if we held back 500,000 until we have a discussion with Turk, until we do that, and then if we need to reallocate it, we reallocate it, I would be fine with that.
And that was basically going to be my comment. I think we all want to achieve the same goal, which is to make sure we're taking care of the population that Sandra described. But this money has not been working for us yet, and I think the sooner we have it working for us, the better. And that's why we're here kind of looking at a repurposing of it. So I think that's a good resolution. I did have one question on the housing. I'm a little confused about, is the housing opportunities for older adults, is that the program where home repairs were being done, or is that something totally different?
It was what we called this pot of money that included, we had several initiatives in it. So we had 25 million total of ARPA, and of this, we had, I think in the older adults bucket, maybe 6.5 million, where we made funding available through Barnes for rental housing, a home sharing network where older adults could use a technology to rent out their, and that's actually in contracting. The other one was this 1.2 million was specifically for nonprofits to receive money, work with older adults it's not typical home repairs. It was more of converting a portion of their home for rent. And that was informed by a lot of the stakeholder groups, but even though we had the nonprofits that are in this space, part of that conversation, and we workshop with them, at the end of the day, they decided to stick more to their mission of regular home repairs. We do have those applications as part of this last funding round, but some of them are tied to the tornado recovery, which we can't link to ARPA dollars because of the pandemic nexus, so we're looking to fund those through our operating. So we have roughly 30 million of operating funds, and then this 5.2 million to get us close to the 40 million of projects we've received in this last funding round.
And then my remaining question was just, and part of my ignorance on this, but in terms of getting this money working toward its intended purpose, which is a more efficient pipeline for that? Is it the Barnes Fund or the Catalyst Fund? I mean, because they both are going to the same purpose, but this is all going to the Barnes Fund, so I'm just curious about that.
The Barnes Fund are grants for nonprofits, and so that's been our vehicle, our primary tool for affordable housing up until 2 years ago when we were created, or prior when Catalyst was funded. Nonprofits need grants, and especially if we're doing deeply affordable housing, because they can't afford to pay debt on a loan. The Catalyst Fund that was capitalized is intended to be a short-term debt product. What we don't have as a tool is a financing mechanism to allow affordable housing developers to go and compete with a market rate developer in purchasing property or an old apartment building. And so with that low interest debt product, that's probably going to be more into that 60% AMI range, larger apartment buildings. All of it, when you think of the housing need, is along a continuum, and different financing tools are intended to finance different types of projects. So we need them all. I will say that.
Well, and I guess the question is, I assume you've made this analysis, but in terms of how we allocate what's really, a fairly significant amount of money, it's 5.2 million, is all of it going to the Barnes Fund as opposed to some of it going to the Catalyst Fund? Is that the highest and best use to get the most impact?
What we have here are actual proposals with actual units that we know will be built with this money.
Thank you, that's helpful.
So what I think would be the revised request would be that we would, and Angie, I don't know if it matters to you which bucket 500 stays in, but just for simplicity, I might keep it in the housing opportunities for older adults. That essentially, that 500,000 would still be in there because we're not reallocating it today. Is that what you wanted?
I thought we were doing the 5.2 for the.
Yeah, I thought we were doing the 500K out of the 4.9.
Out of the Strobel Fund.
Yes, but it means if we're only allocating 4.85 million to Strobel, it means there's 500 still sitting in one of these three.
Got it.
I would, if you don't mind, I would take the 200,000 from the housing support
Yep.
software and then the remaining 3 from whichever. We weren't intending to reallocate any of the older adults to the Strobel, and we were looking to do part of the equitable home ownership.
I gotcha. Okay,
So I
so
would-
leave the 200 in place, and then instead of reallocating 8,739,000, take the other 300, so we'd be allocating 8,439,446 plus the full 1.2. That would get 4.85 million to Strobel and the 5,239,446 to Barnes. Did that make? I can repeat that. I'm talking to myself for a minute. Y'all want to join my world? Okay. So we currently have those 3 buckets available to reallocate. We are going to reallocate, instead of 8.7 million, 8,739,446, we are going to reallocate 8,439,446, which essentially leaves 300,000, I'll just say parked in that. It's appropriated still for that. For that description, for the pathways to equity. You know, we know we're gonna come back for it, but that's where it's sitting. We're gonna reallocate the full 1.2 million from the housing opportunities for older adults, and we're gonna reallocate, and we're gonna leave the 200,000. So essentially what we've done is we've left the 200,000 in that software, just kind of parked, and we've left 300,000 in that first resolution parked.
So we will later repurpose them.
Yes. Yeah. So that sits there for future reallocation. This committee has already heard what the intended reallocation will be coming for. The 4.85, I assume, gets the center opened.
But the process for getting, in effect, a budget for how we're going to address the rehousing of the immigrant population is sort of arriving and not having any guidance. How is that sort of budget going to be created?
I think you said that former Councilman Sledge is working with Turk.
So they're gonna
And
come
so
up
they
with
will
something.
come with a proposal.
Okay.
And so when that proposal comes, and I'm not one to, I'm really transparent. So when it comes, they know they have 500,000 available, but Turk also knows there's 272 that can be added to that.
Yeah, if they tend to not use it for the other.
And so if we don't need it for that, I think then this committee could go back and put
Just
together
in Strobel.
into Strobel. So, all right, if that was clear, can I get a motion to?
So moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we have 6, right?
Andrew.
I'll take that one.
All right. The last thing, I'm not going to keep us for it. At the last meeting, you all had requested some updates from MDHA, the music venue study, MAC childcare, aging in place, and interim gap housing. You just reallocated some of the aging in place and interim gap housing. The other 3, MDHA, we can give you their written report. Well, I'll just email it to the committee. The music venue study, they will be finished within the next couple of weeks, they said, and it will be posted. So once they post it, I'll actually just email it to y'all, even if you're looking for it. And then we will have I'll just email you the MAC childcare update, but they've spent almost all the funds. We're in the process of spending all the funds. So if there's any other, like I said, we get the department updates, so we'll continue at the next meeting. I just knew this agenda was pretty full. You'll see again kind of all the expenditures. We have them through, well, we have to do a June 30 report.
Yeah, there will be at FY24 end.
Yeah, so we have to do a June 30 report, and we'll have that by mid-July. So that might be our next meeting, but when do we
might
can
be sooner.
We can talk.
Yeah.
We can maybe do a meeting sooner. I know summer's tough. So we'll try to do as much notice and give maybe some options on dates to make sure we get a quorum during summer travel season.
question, and 275 may be too much to just reallocate, but I wondered if Turk called you and talked to you about wanting to reallocate that to this program, it would have to come back here.
It would need to
Because
come
of the
back
amount.
because it's a change in scope.
Okay.
Yep, not so much the amount as
Okay.
it's a change in
Change
work
scope.
scope. So just like we did today with Fisk, we
Right.
did it previously,
Gotcha.
somebody reduced the amount, anyway.
Sorry.
We've had a couple other, when it's a change in scope of work, it will always come to this committee. The only ones that haven't come is, we've gotten some 8,000 and 10,000 kind of adjustments. They weren't asking for more money, they were just shifting in their grant spending. And Metro has a policy of approving those. But if they ever got a lot, like I brought the one Fisk one around the salaries.
So
if you remember.
YW changed the scope a little bit.
Yeah, YW is minor, but we'll bring any change of scope. Any other questions? Thank you all for being here. We are officially adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Made up a lot of